Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is jam. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear jam used is to mean to squeeze or pack tightly into some specified or specific place. So many times when people are thinking about this, you might be thinking of people fitting into a tight space, or you might be thinking of certain objects being squeezed or packed tightly. A second way you hear the verb jam get used is to mean to become or make unable to work or move due to a part seizing or becoming stuck. So with this second definition, if you've ever worked in an office, then I imagine your mind goes to the photocopier. This is a device that frequently jams, where something gets stuck, maybe a piece of paper that's either being fed into it or being fed out as material is being copied or printed. But that is something that happens quite often. Now, a third way you might hear jam used is in connection to roads. And so when we have a lot of cars, automobiles, other transportation devices crowding onto a road so that it's blocked and people are unable to move, this same verb will be used to describe that action. A fourth way the verb jam gets used is a little older fashioned one, but it's when phone lines are just continuously busy with phone calls and really causing others to not be able to connect or make a call. So you might hear phone lines were jammed during a particular time where maybe something could first be ordered or reserved or something of that nature. Now, a fifth way you might hear jam used is to mean to make an electronic signal unintelligible by causing interference. So I feel like as I was thinking about this definition, my mind went to TV shows, movies, where there are spies, maybe governments working to collect information or prevent other countries from being able to get classified or confidential information. And so you might hear signals being jammed. You should know that jam is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, I'm going to need to double the ending consonant before I add that ing ending. And the reason I'm doing that is I have a verb that has a consonant, a vowel, and then another consonant. That's how it's ending. It's one syllable. It's got a short vowel sound, and this is a pretty common pattern we see in English. So before we add suffixes that begin with vowel letters, when we see that CVC pattern, very common to double the ending consonant. You'll also see that I've doubled the ending consonant when I go to make the past tense or the participle forms of this verb. Okay, so I'm going to double the M before I add ed. Now, my base verb, jam, ends in a voiced M sound. This means that my ed ending is just going to make a D sound. Okay? And I'm not adding an extra syllable as I say it. So it should sound like this: jammed, jammed. Now, I know I've already given you a lot of definitions, maybe some different meanings than you're used to seeing, but I actually have a number of phrasal verbs for us to discuss today that connect to this same verb. So the first one we're going to begin discussing today is to jam in or jam into. I think it's a little more common to hear the into form here, but the three meanings for jam into that we're going to talk about are similar as to jam in. So the first way jam into gets used is to mean to fit into a small or tight space. Usually we're fitting these things using some force, or it's very difficult to try and make them fit. An example of this might be, 4 of her friends jammed into the back seat of the car. Now, in many cars, maybe only 3 people can fit. So we can imagine kind of 4 people really having some difficulty trying to fit into that back seat. You should know that jammed into there is an example of the simple past tense in active voice. You're going to see a few passive voice examples a little later. Now, a second way jam into gets used is to mean to cause something to fit into a small or tight space, again, with difficulty or by using force. An example of this might be, we can't jam anything else into the suitcase. I know there are a lot of people traveling over the summer. Maybe you've had that experience where you are really trying to make more things fit. But here, I'm using the modal can't to say I don't have the ability to fit anything else into the suitcase. Now, a third way you'll hear jam into used is to mean to drive something into a tight space between or inside something else. An example of this might be, a rock was jammed into the motorcycle's shifter. Heard this sentence really used. So if somebody was having difficulty shifting and not sure why, well, this rock had been forced into that tight space. That's what was preventing it from working. So here, was jammed into is an example of passive voice in the simple past tense. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is jam with. This can have a couple different meanings. One would be to clog or obstruct something. An example of this, has it been jammed with toilet paper? So this is an example of the present perfect part, and I'm talking about a toilet, of course. So sometimes you hear pipes, toilets, another example here of things that get clogged. So where water or other items are not able to pass through. And by using too much toilet paper, you can obstruct or jam something. Okay. Another way to use jam with is to mean to fill the entirety. So entirety, all of something. And this could be some space, maybe some container, but we're talking about a large quantity or a large amount of things. An example of this, she jams her backpack with books, snacks, and practice clothes every morning. Okay. This is an example of a sentence in the simple present. It's in the active voice. Here we're talking about someone's habit, their routine. They're filling the entirety of their backpack with these different items. Let's continue talking. Now we're going to, in a moment, talk about the phrasal verb jam together. But first, I want to note that jam with and jam together can have some similar meanings. So another way to use jam with is usually to schedule or plan many things kind of within the same time frame. And an example of this might be, the family jammed together all sorts of activities during their vacation. Right? So maybe they were swimming, they were playing miniature golf, they went hiking, they went to a museum, right? And they're trying to schedule all of these things within this short time that they have on a vacation. Here, the family jammed together is an example of the simple past tense in the active voice. My second example here, my day is jammed with tons of meetings. Okay, this is present tense, but it's in the passive voice. And I'm saying, right, my schedule is full of meetings. Now, there is another meaning that jam with and jam together share. And this is a bit more informal. It's used in connection to music, and generally it's when people are playing unrehearsed or improvised music. So music they're kind of making up on the spot. Okay, and generally they're doing that together. So again, I've got 2 more example sentences here. That group jams together every Sunday afternoon. There's a simple present sentence in the active voice, right? I'm talking again about a habit or a routine here. An example of jam with would be Madonna jammed with the Roots last year. Okay, so we've got two different, one singer and a band, right, joining together and again playing this unrehearsed music. That's simple past tense, also in the active voice. Okay. Now let's talk about some additional ways to use jam together. The first way you might hear this phrasal verb used is to mean to put two or more things using a lot of force very close together. An example of this: the kids will jam all their toys, puzzles, and games together in their toy box, right? So you can imagine they're just trying to force all the things into this type of container. And maybe they're kind of all mixed, but they've been told maybe to pick things up off the floor, so that's what they're doing, and just shoving those items into their toy box. Here, will jam is an example of the simple future. Now, a second way to use jam together would be to connect or build something, but generally you're doing it very quickly, maybe kind of carelessly, so not a lot of attention to detail. An example of this might be he's jamming something together for tomorrow's class project. Okay? So maybe we have somebody here who's waited to the last minute and they just need to quickly finish something, right? So they maybe are able to turn in this particular project. He's jamming something together is an example of the present progressive or the present continuous. The last phrasal verb I'm going to talk about today is the third way to use jam together, and that's to cause two or more people to be very close together. An example of this: too many prisoners are jammed into a single cell. And as I thought about this definition and looked a little bit, unfortunately, there are way too many newspaper articles that mention this idea of overcrowding. So having people in very small, confined spaces. Too many prisoners are jammed into, or jammed together, I should say, sorry. That is another into, and it would work there, but too many prisoners are jammed together into a single cell is what I think I meant to write there. I apologize. But the idea, they're overcrowded, there's not enough space, and there are so many bad things that can occur because of that. Now, let's take a moment to look at some words that are related to our verb jam. And the first word, and really only word we're going to talk about today, is the noun form of this word. So the noun jam, you're going to notice, has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. Like our verb, the noun can have a number of different meanings. One way to use the noun jam is to talk about the instance of a machine or a thing seizing or becoming stuck. So again, think back to my earlier example of the photocopier, maybe at your school or in your office. An example of how you might hear it used would be, there's a paper jam in the copier on the 4th floor. Okay? Now, a second way jam gets used is kind of a shortened form for traffic jam. So remember back, we talked about this idea of a roadway being filled with automobiles that are blocking forward progress. So you might hear somebody say something like, there's a big jam on I-80, which is in the United States kind of a shortened form for Interstate 80. But you can hear this used with highways, other avenues, streets, what have you. Now, a third way the noun jam gets used is to refer to an awkward situation, a predicament. So this can, might think of really just a problem, right? Maybe you're supposed to be one place and now you found out you need to be in a second place at the exact same time, right? That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So somebody might say, I'm in a real jam. Can you help me? right? So they've got maybe a difficult situation, a problem. Now, usually it's not a huge thing, but just something that usually needs quick attention as well. Now, a fourth way to use the noun jam goes back to that meaning where we were talking about musicians getting together, playing unrehearsed or improvised music. So, again, you might hear a sentence like this: Fish is one of the most famous jam bands. And there are certain groups of performers who are known for getting together and kind of seeing where the music takes them and what they're going to play without kind of like a set plan for a particular performance. Now, a fifth way to use the noun jam is something that I just love. It's a sweet food that's usually made from fruit and sugar. It's boiled so it becomes very thick, and then commonly it's eaten as well, it could be in many different ways, but spread on bread or toast is pretty common here in the United States. So an example of this noun in a sentence would be, I'm making some raspberry jam this weekend. And that's a hope. I know I've written that like that is my plan, but we'll see how many raspberries are growing this week. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.